What's up, freaks? This is just me, and today we're gonna be ranking the 8 mandatory poses of the Blade Dexter Jackson from worst to best. And we're gonna be considering the poses throughout the bodybuilder's whole career. As Dexter knows, consistency counts. He knows that better than anyone else, right? So, for a pose to be high, he needs to be good in it for the most of his career. Okay, and Dexter needs no introduction, I'm sure, but let's give a short one. He's a Mr. Olympia champ from 2008, and he was actually on top of the game throughout the whole 2000s and 2010s, so his longevity is remarkable. And he also won a record setting 5 Arnold Classic titles, and he had a really impressive balanced physique with some great aesthetics. But now let's start the mandatory poses countdown already. The weakest pose would be the front lat spread. I think most of us could have predicted this placing. Dex isn't structurally suited for this pose. His clavicles are not that wide, and his frame is smaller in general. He doesn't have weak lats, and his V taper is not bad. He still boasts a small waistline, right, and a decent lower body. But this pose, when looked as a whole, doesn't look dominant. He looks pretty vulnerable in it, if you ask me. And in a lineup, he would definitely be one of the smaller structures. And next up is another weaker pose for Dexter Jackson, the side triceps. His horseshoe is just not the best. I don't think it's horrible, but it definitely looks pretty flattened and not top tier. His posture looks a little messed up too. I think he could have executed this pose much better. He's leaning far too much to the front, and that makes the midsection look like it's protruding, which I don't think it really was because Dexter had a pretty trim waistline in other poses. So this one is just not one of his best. Although if you look at his delt, for example, it looks pretty good. And next up, this might be a little bit surprising, but I have the rear lat spread next. And I've heard some people say this is one of the best rear lat spreads of all time, but honestly, I don't really see it. This is a superlative pose, but it only finishes 6th. It breaks my heart, but we have more poses to go through. There are even a little bit better, if you ask me. You can be the judge of this. Anyway, in the lat spread, Dexter's lower body was never the biggest, but it was always super shredded. The glutes and hamstrings are very sharp. His Christmas tree looks insanely well defined, and the lats and traps look fairly big too. And he's got a small waist, so his V taper looks very good. Certainly one of the best V tapers, although he is not wide through the shoulders, really. The lower back looks just crazy in this pose most of the time. He looks 100 times better than in the front version of this pose. But still, if you put him into a lineup, he is probably going to be the smallest most of the time. And that typically wouldn't work very well in the lat spreads in particular, in my opinion. So that's why I ranked this pose so low. But next up, in 5th, we have the front double. That's a great pose as well. But almost all of Dexter's poses are great, right? Legs look the same as in the rest of the mandatories. Those were never Dex's claim to fame, but sure, his waspy waist and tight abdominals were. His midsection has a little bit of an odd shape, in my opinion, and personally, I don't really like it, but it's separated and small, so I have no objective criticism towards it. The lat taper is very good, and the arms, Dexter sure has one of the best sets of arms. Look at his full ripped biceps and forearms especially. But now, according to myself, the side chest is even more impressive. His display is not very traditional, I don't think. His shoulder isn't dipping as much as it is with most others, but he hits it so well, it suits his aesthetic physique. He's not like a monster, crazy thick, but he's got lines in spades. The pecs have amazing details and display, although they don't look that thick. But one of the features that I really appreciate in this pose on Dexter is the separation between his delt and the arm. That's, I would say, a signature for him. Looks really eye-catching in the pose. And also the lower body looks very sharp. But in third, I have the most muscular, which is a really freaky pose for Dexter. It is typically most or more suited to bigger bodybuilders, but Dexter is sort of an exception to the rule, in my opinion. He looks amazing in the hands clasp version, but he is even more renowned for his crab version, where he looks very shredded every time he hits it in the arms and shoulders. And of course, he has his trademark traps that he can pop in this pose and make them look like they are half the size of his head, which is very impressive, and it looks super freaky. So I think Dexter is pretty known for this pose. That's why I put it very high. But in my opinion, some of you I think might not agree with this, but I think that the back double biceps is one of Dexter's best shots. I think he just looks so well put together in this pose. He looks like he could be a statue. I mean, the V-taper is amazing. The delts look ginormous, but they have a lot of detail as well. It's not just a blob of undetailed muscle. And the arms look awesome. As I said, one of the best sets, especially compared to his head. His whole arm and shoulder look pretty freakishly big. And the back is full of detail, as well as the lower body. So I just am personally a fan of this back double biceps. Let me know if you think it is better than Dexter's rear lat spread and some of the poses between these two in my ranking. But now we have the winner, which is going to be the ab and thigh. That was, in my opinion, Dexter's most dominating pose throughout his entire career, despite the fact that towards the end it faded away slightly. His abs got much worse and looked washed out, like you can see on the right hand side. But he never really had a distension, at least not in his prime though. His abs were really separated, and the six pack has its own trademark shape, and I'm absolutely not a fan of it, but again, this is personal preference and I don't want to be biased in this video, so his six pack is definitely good overall. And he has a small waistline, great V-taper, partially thanks to the way he hits the pose, leaning forward and sort of sticking his midsection backwards, so it looks smaller. I think that's his own technique, but I'm not quite sure. And even though his thighs are not the strongest feature, it doesn't really make that much of a difference in this pose. He just looks very aesthetic, and he can beat most lineups, I would say. We still don't really know whether the judges even look at aesthetics, right? But sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's what I personally think. It depends on the judges. So if I were a judge, I would definitely like to score this pose for Dexter very high, because this is a crazy good pose for the 2000s and 2010s eras especially. High praise for this pose. And so that's all for this video. But guys, I'm definitely not set on this ranking myself, and it's subjective anyway. And especially in Dexter's case, it was really tough to rank his poses, him being so complete and balanced and having every pose managed. So your opinion might be completely opposite of mine. Feel free to let me know down in the comment section below if it is. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to watch some Dexter Jackson videos, and also like and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your day.